Christina Randle is our guest. We're talking about her book, Getting It Together, Gaining the Thriving Professional's Effective Edge. We've just come through the 4 Ds of decision-making: delete, do, delegate, and defer. I've got to tell you, of all of the things that I've read in the book, that has been the one that had the most immediate impact in reducing my email clutter. I was the guy who kept going back 4 and 5 times, creating a folder for every email, and then trying to go back and keep up with it. So deleting is this magical empowerment for cleaning out your in-basket. And why do we feel guilty about emailing it or deleting an email?
I'm not sure if it's guilty. I think it's worried that they're going to need something later. In fact, that's what the most common thing that we hear. What if I need it? Do you really need that thank you that you sent something to somebody and they wrote back thank you? And so I think it's also a habit. People just go on to the next thing without ever completing and bringing closure to that one thing that we've been working on.
A lot of this is a mental game, isn't it? I mean, you talk closure, you talk moving on, you talk fulfillment of completing a task. This is a mental game.
I think it's mental and emotional. We tend to overwork our mind, and we're overworking our minds not in a strategic way, in a very low-level way, opening and closing that email, thinking about things, whether it's the meeting that we just came from or the meeting that we're going into, and we fret and we worry about it. And the combination of those two things combined really just wear us out.
So let's move on to grouping then. Now we've made the decisions. We've made a 10-second decision, and we're going to group our calendars and tasks and all of that. Let's talk about the grouping part of the effective edge.
Really, it's a very simple concept, which says I'm going to in order to help me focus, I'm going to put like kinds of things together. So if I have calls to make, I'm going to put all of my calls together. So let me take a step back. There's 6 ways to organize information, and we tend to be most intuitively drawn to grouping, putting like kinds of things together. So we group or sort by topic when we're filing reference material. So we might put all HR stuff together and all legal stuff together, all stuff related to a specific project together. And when it comes to the things that we have to act on, we need to also use and leverage that same thinking. But in this case, we're going to put like kinds of actions together, like kinds of to-dos together. And that would look like putting all of my calls together, for instance. Or I have a boss, and I can't ever seem to remember. He calls me or she calls me, and I want to really listen to what she's saying, and yet I know that there's something I really need to talk to her about. God, is it in my email box, or did I print it out? Is it in my inbox? And while she's talking to me, I'm kind of looking at what she's, for the item that that I need to discuss with her. Or maybe I remember 2 items, but then there's 3. And what people say the most is when the moment that they remember that last item is the same moment when the phone clicks in the receiver, or when it hit end. And so for some reason it seems to not be as readily available. So if they have a category or have a sort of a group of items to talk to their boss about, for instance, that would be very useful in always remembering, but also being able to track the things that they've talked to their boss about. So that's the concept of grouping, is putting like kinds of things together that actually enable us to be more effective, to be more focused, and to feel more of a sense of accomplishment.
I don't want to get too technical, because I think it's all available in the book, and people really need, if they really want to get into this, are probably going to have to look deeper at the book. But under the grouping, you talk about 11 categories, and you talk about the triple dot, the double dot, and the single dot grouping method. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, the idea of we have 3 dots, 2 dots, and 1 dot. So it's really a technology limitation in that I want the natural default is for things to show up in either numerical order or alphabetical order. And so the dots really just allow a hierarchy so that the 3 dots are they're going to be my bigger picture. So, for instance, the projects that are active and I'm working on, if I put those as 3 dots and list them, I'm more likely to be successful because I'm going to see those and have those in front of me, and they're my big picture. So I want them front and center. Then there's 2 dot categories, which are in the book we talk about actions, which are items that I specifically have to act on myself. Phone calls I need to make to people. Most people have a category called team or staff. So they're people that we communicate with ongoingly and frequently. And there's not really any specific medium that we might communicate with them. We might see them in the hallway. We might see them in the lunch room. We might see them at another meeting that we're both happening to attend to, or voicemail or email. And so we just keep a running list so that we can make sure we have access to that. And then there's a category called waiting for, and this has been proven to be a stress reliever for people because a lot of people take certain actions on something and then they pass it off to someone else to ask them to take an action, and that puts that original person in what's called a waiting for mode. But many times if they don't have it tracked as something that they're waiting for, they can't remember what it is, and so they keep trying to move forward on that. And they go, oh, yes, I can't do anything about that yet. I have to wait for so-and-so to get back to me before I can act on that. And then we have single dot categories like errands, someday maybe, and home. And the uniqueness of those categories, if you'll notice, any of the categories I've listed, I didn't say business and home, and the reason, or personal. And the reason for that is that we don't make a distinction between the things we do at work and the things we do at home. We call it one person, one life, one list. And the idea is, in order to effectively manage our work life, we need to also manage more effectively our business life. And trying to separate those two really breaks down very quickly. And most of us tend to not get the personal things done, and that tends to not give us less energy to be able to really move forward on the business things that we also